Joining me now is the number 2 Democrat in the House, Congressman Steny Hoyer. Congressman, good morning to you, sir. I apologize. I know we're running a little bit late here. Let me ask you first on Iraq. Do you have the stomach to see the United States get involved militarily, even on a temporary basis?
Well, look, I think Wolfowitz was correct. I think Menendez is correct. It's going to have consequences for us, whatever happens. We have a group in there, whether you call it Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever you call it, that wishes us no good and has historically taken a lot of Americans' lives. So that we have a real stake in this, a real interest in this. Then the question becomes, okay, what do you do? I think that's a much more complicated issue. Once we decide it has consequences for us, what do we do? I think we're going to have to talk about that. I talked to the administration over the weekend on Friday, Tony Blinken. Frankly, I didn't have any incisive advice to give them at that point in time. But I think we're going to have to see what options are available to us to try to dissuade and to defeat the proponents of terrorism. Clearly, there's a lot of blame to go around, but right now we need to look at what can we get done in an effective way that will have some long-term consequence, not just temporary.
Should this be separated almost from the Iraq issue itself, which is the President Obama should frame this as a, look, this is about ISIS, or this is about this specific group that is wreaking havoc in Syria and wreaking havoc in Iraq?
Well, actually, it's a broader issue than that, though, in my view. Mainly because Maliki has failed to do what he absolutely needed to do, and that is bring in the Sunni community into the coalition. In fact, it's been a Shia-Sunni confrontation with the Sunnis feeling correctly, I think, shut out. I think Bremer started that. I think Maliki has continued that. I think that's part of the problem, but not all the problem. You have a group, whether it's in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran, that very much wants to see a hegemony of their group in power and others shut out. That's not going to work. So we need both a short-term strategy and a longer-term strategy.
Does this fall into the president's, into the essentially the war authorization that was passed by Congress way back 12 years ago? Does this fall under that power, and he can operate without going back to Congress?
I personally believe the answer to that is yes. We gave him some very broad powers. We may want to reconsider those at some point in time, but I think he has the authority to act, yes.
All right, let me move to your new dance partner. At some point, you work very closely with whoever is the number 2 on the House Republican side, the majority leader. What do you expect will be the same, and what will change when it comes to working with a Kevin McCarthy versus an Eric Cantor?
Well, look, it appears very likely that Kevin McCarthy is going to be elected. I think that's a testimony to his relationship to his members across the spectrum of the Republican caucus. As you know, I've said repeatedly the Republican Party is a deeply divided party at war with itself in many respects. I think the Cantor loss was demonstrative of that. But I think Kevin McCarthy is someone who does work across his party. I think can be an effective majority leader, and I certainly have every intention of working with him and sitting down with him and trying to common agreements.
Yeah,
we have
Congress gets very little done, but there's been some that worry that they'll get even less done without Eric Cantor there. Are you in that camp?
Well, I'm not necessarily in that camp. Boehner and McCarthy working together, and Cantor, after all, is not leaving. I think people dismissed too quickly Eric Cantor. He's a very influential, very effective member of his party. He'll be here for the next 6 months. We have a lot of issues we need to deal with. We need to deal with unemployment insurance, minimum wage. We need to deal with voting rights. I was hopeful that Eric Cantor would be helpful on that. I'm hopeful that McCarthy will be. We need to deal with comprehensive immigration reform that everybody across the spectrum thinks is broken, and Kevin McCarthy has indicated he's supportive of. He's been more forward-leaning on that issue. Highways funding, so many issues that we need to deal with for the American people. So hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Well, we shall see anyway. Congressman Steny Hoyer, the number 2 Democrat in the House, thanks for coming on. My apologies for running a little bit late with you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chuck.
Up next.